Dannphan's advice.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a somewhat special edition of Dannphan's advice. Usually I talk about comics and writing. Now I want to talk a little bit about how you go about showing your comics, showing your writing, showing whatever personal projects you be working on, and how to know one of the most important things of all. If you're not ready. And chances are, you're not ready. So half of this video is probably just gonna be me sharing with you stories, cause oh do I know stories. And the other half is going to be giving you the actual advice. So first of all, some of you people might be wondering, what does she mean by you're not ready? To be very blunt, a lot of people have that anxiety, motivation, that push that causes them to make impulsive decisions on a project that is not very good. Now there could be multiple reasons why a project is not very good. Maybe the art is not top tier. Maybe the writing has some plot holes in it. Maybe the panels are out of order. But a lot of people don't really know that their project has problems and they just dive headfirst, spend all this money trying to get their project made, get it out there, try to make a campaign, they flop or they succeed, but then they end up losing more money on the campaign. I think a lot of people are excited about bringing their comic projects to Indiegogo. There's like this huge push of comic creators going to Indiegogo to fund their projects being made rather than relying on publishers. And that's not by any means a bad thing, but a lot of people are flocking to Indiegogo who don't even have comic experience. I see this all the time. Writers who go to Indiegogo who put on some artists that they know and try to get their comic rolling even though they don't have any comic experience personally. And those comics do not turn out very good. I see it all the time where there's too much narration because writers don't understand that you have to let the art do the narrating for you. A comic is not supposed to explain verbally everything that's going on. That's what novels are for, and they don't even know how to write a comic script, so they just hand the artist a story, and it's really up to the artist to figure out how to organize the panels and how to flesh out the pages. And sometimes an artist doesn't really know how to do that, especially if this is the first comic that the artist is actually working on. And let me tell you, for a lot of the buzz that Indiegogo gets, a lot of these independent creators, I love the fact that independent creators are going to Indiegogo and getting the project funded directly through the fans. But of course, there's also a lot of people going there just for the monies and not necessarily because they have a good idea. And let me tell you, a lot of comics that I've gotten from Indiegogo have been okay at best. Not a lot of them have really blown me away. A lot of them are just kind of like head nods, like, okay, it's passable. And then of course every now and then I'll get a comic from Indiegogo that I didn't like, and then I just feel like I wasted my money and time. And you don't want to make backers feel like they wasted their money and time. Chances are, if you're just making cheap ideas on Indiegogo that aren't really passionate, then customers probably won't come back the second time around. They'll go to somebody else who can actually deliver. Now, when I say I have stories, I have a lot of people who send me comics to review on this channel. And I'm not against anyone sending me comics. I'll totally review your comic on this channel. However, there are some that I simply cannot because it would just be mean. And I'm not calling anyone out, but I will say there are comics sent to me that are so bad that if I made a video about them, it would only hurt the creator. It would not help them at all. So it's me doing more so a favor by not reviewing it on the channel. What I'll usually do instead is just write them back and give them like a review with text rather than a video. Because obviously they still need to know why the comic was bad, but I can't just publicly humiliate them like that. That would just be too mean. I know a lot of you look at me like this really harsh critic, and I'm pretty harsh, but I'm not that harsh. If something is clearly, very obviously bad and embarrassing, I won't just humiliate someone publicly. I can't do that. But yeah, there have been a lot of comics sent to me, and a lot of them were just simply not ready. Some of them, the drawings were terrible. It looked like pen drawings, like chicken scratch. Some of them were just so bland and tasteless. It's like a big nothing burger. There's just nothing there, to the point where I can't even have an opinion on it. Might as well have sent me a comic with just blank pages. And yes, I've had a comic sent to me in which panels were out of order. And just to clarify, not like a manga, a normal comic in which the panels on one page were mixed up, like as in the writer or the artist or whoever was putting the comic together just didn't understand how panels were read in a comic. So you know how you have like 1-2 panel here and then 1 panel here for one row? Usually you read up, down, over to the right. How they wanted you to read it was up, over to the right, back to the left. That's not how a comic is read. And that's what I mean about these writers who get into comics because they see it as a cash grab. A lot of them have not read comics. A lot of them don't understand these very important rules that you need to know when you put together a comic book. And a lot of these people are just burning money trying to make this happen right away when they haven't even started small. They haven't even done their small projects just to experiment with it a little bit before just jumping headfirst into this thing. So my first little bit of advice that I would give to you people is start small. Don't just jump headfirst into a campaign before you've done other comics, and at the very least read some comics before just making one. You know, I definitely think that Oh Girl was probably not the best idea to do my first campaign for. But regardless, I'm still glad that I did a small campaign before trying to do a bigger one, because a lot of comic scripts I write are actually more like graphic novels with a high page count. Oh Girl was a lot more simple, 22-page floppy issue, low goal of 5,000, small team, just me and the artist. That's a lot simpler and it's a lot easier to accomplish for a first campaign. Whether or not the story was a good idea for a first campaign, that's a whole other thing. But I'm glad that when I go back and try to do one of my bigger stories for a campaign, that I'll have the experience of doing the smaller one first. So I'll get a hands-on idea of the prices, how much everything will cost. I'll get a hands-on idea of the shipping and what that process is going to be like. And that's when you get to the campaign stage. I don't think you should ever start with a campaign. I think you should at least do comics beforehand just to practice at the art itself, or practice at making the scripts if you're just a writer. Which would lead me into my second point of advice, which is to get criticism before publishing anything. Now, not everyone is going to get criticism every time that they publish something really small, of course. But if you're going to be putting up comics that are going to be on your resume, like your proof that you know what you're doing, you should have critics come in and pick apart what you've got. And don't get friends to criticize your comics who will just pat you on the head and be like, oh, it's good. You need someone who will rip your heart out. You really do. Because people who don't want to upset you will purposely leave out legitimate criticisms that you need to hear. But even more so, you can't be a spoiled sport about receiving criticism, otherwise you just encourage people to not give you legitimate criticisms. I see it all the time, these people who throw freaking tantrums over the fact that I criticize one part of their story, or I criticize how the art looks or something. Spamming all these defensive messages, completely up in arms like they've just entered a war. Critics are just trying to help you. Regardless of how they go about it, the end goal is to help you. And like I've said before on the channel, if you do send me a comic, it's not gonna get a fluff review. I'm not just gonna be giddy about it because a fan sent me their comic. I critique it just like how I critique all of the comics on this channel. If you find yourself in a position where you get angry or you can't handle criticism, not only are you not ready, but you will never be ready. Now, the last bit of advice that I will give you, and this is basic advice if you are going to do a campaign. Make sure you know what the fuck you're doing. Make sure you actually look up the numbers that you'll need. Make sure you have a team together that you can trust. I mean, there's a whole other video I can make about getting a team together, because working with people that's a hassle. But at the very least, make sure whoever you're working with is not trying to screw you. And of course, make sure you're not putting too much work than you can actually handle. Running a campaign can be very stressful, and if you find yourself not capable in high-stress situations, you're probably not going to do as well as other campaigns do. That's about all I've got to say for today about knowing whether or not you're ready. I know regardless of watching this video, a lot of you will probably dive in head first anyway, but I do encourage you to follow the advice to make sure that when you do get the chance to prove yourself, prove that you're capable of making great projects, that you actually make those projects great and not mediocre or complete garbage. Hopefully this advice is useful to you. Obviously, I'll have to make more videos getting into more detailed advice, but at least you'll have the basics. If you have your own advice on the matter of knowing whether or not you're ready for a real project to start, leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. That's what it's there for. If you'd like to see more Dannphan's advice videos, make sure that you're actually subscribed so you'll know when they come out. And of course, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye!
Program restart. Shutting down all systems.